Today on the Bass Pixie's double bass tutorials, we are going to look at some very basic concepts and terminology of music theory in general. Now, I know you guys are all used to me standing here with my big instrument. But today I'm going to use a different big instrument. This is actually my first love, my piano. Just because some of these concepts that I'm going to explain today are much easier to show you using a piano where the notes are linear, rather than a bass or a guitar where the notes are a little bit all over the place. So music is simply a range of different sounds which, when put together, they sound really good. Notes are made up of different frequencies, and all that music systems do is put names and systems to those frequencies to help us figure out which sounds would sound good together. You can create these sounds in loads of different ways. We've found ridiculously inventive ways of making different frequencies over the years. So you've got, your string instruments, violin, your bass, guitars, all that kind of stuff, and you strum them and you can bow them, and all it is creating a range of frequencies. You've got your good old piano, which is strings and percussion all at the same time, a little bit of hammer hitting a string in there. You've got your tuned percussions, your timpanis, your xylophones, and then you've got your tubes you can blow through, like your trumpets, your saxes, things like that. There's all these different ways of creating all these different sounds. So the terms that we're going to cover in today's video are some really basic ones that you'll come across in a lot of my videos. We're going to cover the term octave, the terms semitone and tone, major and minor, flat and sharp, and scales. So knowing music theory is going to be really helpful if you are looking into things like improvising, songwriting, transcribing. So any of the things that are beyond just learning a basic tune by rote. If you want to go beyond that and really understand a little bit of music, these terms are really going to help you in your future study of music. Western tonal music is a system that is used mostly in England, America, in a lot of jazz and things like that. So the music that you'll be familiar with is all based around the Western tonal music system. So this system is based around the octave. An octave is simply a frequency played alongside double the frequency. And when you put those two notes together, they sound pretty much the same, just one's higher and one's lower. So I'll give you an example. If I play a C here, and then I play the C above, you can hear that those two frequencies match perfectly. And that's called an octave. So the system that we use most is based around this octave. And the octave is broken down into 12 individual segments. And these segments are called semitones. So a semitone, when you're looking at a piano, for example, a semitone is the distance between one frequency and the very next one up. So that is a semitone. From here to here, that's also a semitone, semitone, and all the way up. Two notes that are together. If you go further apart, that's no longer a semitone. They have their own names. Another term that I use quite frequently is tone. Now a tone is literally as simply as skipping one and moving on to the next. So the space between here and here, and here and here, and here and here. It's all about skipping one. It doesn't matter if you're missing out a black note on a piano or a white note. It's just about skipping one of them. So it's basically two semitones. And that's what a tone is. So something else that's really useful to know when you're looking at music, and something that most musicians will remember being a little kid and having your instrument and wanting to go out and play some rock music or some jazz or something awesome or just pop music, and being given a book of scales and you want to shoot yourself and you're just like, why do I have to do my scales? It's so rubbish. But as an adult, you realise why these scales are so important, because the scales are the basis of music. They're the basis of understanding music. Now, it might sound a little bit boring, and if you're not interested in really going further, stop here, don't bother, it's fine. But if you really want to understand what you're playing and why you're playing it and how to transcribe and how to compose, you need to understand the basic way that music is broken down. So a scale is simply a series of notes. There's lots of different scales. We've got the major, we've got the harmonic minor, the melodic minor, the natural minor, the pentatonic, the Phrygian, and I could go on there, but I think there's 36 scales which are the basics of music, and then you can go on. So the first scale I want to look at is a natural minor scale. Now, I know this might sound a little bit weird if you're already a musician, because us pianists know we always start on C major. That's the one. We always start on C major. Guitarists, I think a lot of you probably start on the pentatonic scales. But there's a very good reason in the theory of music for me to start on this scale. So the notes are all called, as we know, most of you, even non-musicians will know, they're all A, B, C, D, E. So they're named after our alphabet. And the reason I want to start on the natural minor is because when you look at music as a system, logic tells you that this had to be the very first scale that ever came into existence. Or this is the scale that music was built around. For the simple reason, we all know our alphabet starts on an A. Okay? We know our alphabet goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Well, it doesn't actually, it goes F, G, H. But, you know, we run out of notes. There's only 7 before you reach the octave, and then you get back to the same note again. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Back to the A. You could carry this on forever and ever and ever if you could hear into dog pictures. But the reason I'm going to look at that is that the A natural minor is made up of these notes. Okay? And a natural minor follows the pattern tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone. And if you follow that pattern anywhere on the piano, you will find a natural minor. So the reason I've chosen A natural minor is because A is the only minor key without a key signature. That means it has no flats and sharps. And we're going to cover flats and sharps in a minute. But before we do that, we're going to look at the scale of C major. So a major scale, you can start a scale, you can start any scale on any note on the piano. But a major scale is one that tends to sound quite happy. And tunes that are written in a major key are ones that tend to sound pretty happy. And I'll just give you an example of a C major scale. So you can see it's got quite a happy sound. A major scale is always made up of the same intervals. So we can start on any note of the piano and play a major scale if you follow the following pattern. We start on a note and then we go tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. If you follow that pattern in any key, starting anywhere on the piano, you'll get the same kind of sound. For example, if I start on an A. And even starting on a black note. So I'll start on an F sharp. So you see, if you just follow the pattern of tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, then you will have a major scale. So the reason I started with both the A natural minor and the C major is because neither of these have what they call flats or sharps in their key signatures. This means, and it's so much easier to illustrate on a piano. So as you can see, A natural minor, it contains only white notes. And C major also contains only white notes. Now when we looked at the C major scale, we looked at starting on different notes. And as you noticed, there were some that started on a black note, and there's some that include black notes. So when we look at the notes on a piano, this one's a C and this one's a D, and it's all based around that scale. But there's a note in between, and when we look at the English alphabet, there is no letter in between C and D. We don't have like C.5 or C.5. So in music, we had to make up a term to describe this note here. The note D is surrounded by 2 black notes. So this note here could be called D flat, because a flat note is one semitone down from the white note we're playing. So now this is what illustrates why it's easy to use your piano, because the black notes are the ones that are normally referred to as flats and sharps. There are some whites, but we'll go into detail later. Whereas on a string instrument, it's just another finger position. So you can see it visually much better on a piano. So here the D, that would be known as D flat. If we go up a semitone, that would be known as D sharp. Now, the reason we have both, because obviously you're thinking, well, if that's D sharp, well, why isn't that C sharp? Well, it is. It really is. So you've got D flat, but it's also C sharp, but never at the same time. Okay, now you're all confused and you're thinking, Serena, what the hell are you talking about? Let me explain. So, we're going to use the key of B major to illustrate this point. Okay, we all know our alphabet. From B, it goes B, C, D, E, F, G, A, when you're on piano, because you jump back, A, B, okay? So we know our alphabet does that. If I call this note here D flat when I'm in B major, I'm going from, because a B major looks and sounds like this, okay? So my second note is here. And if I say, so this is a B, if I then go to this note and call it a D flat, where the hell did C go? C disappears, C goes out the window. And then if you go up doing it flat, so you're going B, D flat, E flat, E. Oh, hang on, we've got two E's in a row there, okay. G flat, miss the F. A flat, B flat, and B, we've got two B's. So everything gets a little bit confusing if we start using flats in that key when we're looking at doing a major scale. So because the major scale, we now know, is following a specific pattern, the only reason sharps and flats exist is to make the patterns easier to understand depending which frequency or note you start on. So with B, we use sharps, because if we use sharp names, we go B, C sharp, C comes after B, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, okay? So we use the sharps. So you're saying, well, why do we have the flats? So this is another example. We're going to start on this note here. Now this note could either be referred to as B flat or A sharp. So let's, for example, do the scale and let's call it A sharp, okay? So the scale would go, this is not what we do, just so we know. A sharp, B sharp, but that's a C. Hang on a minute, then that's a C sharp sharp, or is it a D? It gets stupidly confusing again. So you end up going into stupid things. So when we use that system, we're using flats. B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. And using that, it makes it 10 times easier to understand. So I know at first you're a beginner and you're going, my brain's melting. But once you get used to the concept and break the scales down, don't just go sit at a piano and go, I'm going to learn every single key, or, on a bass. Learn the easy ones first. If you get yourself a beginner's book, it'll show you which one's the easiest for your instrument. Because different instruments, different scales are easier. For example, on a piano, C is brilliant. On a double bass, A is brilliant. And the same for other instruments. Oboe, D is a pretty easy scale. Clarinet, I think C is a pretty easy scale, or is it G? One of the two. I haven't played clarinet for a long time. But either way, each instrument has its own unique, easy scale to do. And that's all to do with the fingering, the way the fingers go. On a piano, it just happens that we have no black notes. On a bass, it's all about the open strings. So A has a lot of nice open strings in there. And it starts low enough that you don't end up having to go up into the gods. So, all your keys depend on the instrument, and the sharps and flats depend on the instrument. But it's always easier to look at the piano to get an understanding of what a sharp and a flat is and why we would use them in a certain scale. Just a side note on the sharp and flats, you will also hear a lot of musicians, generally not on a piano, more on string instruments or sometimes on woodwind, things like that, on brass, saying, oh, you sound a bit flat, or oh, you sound a bit sharp. And what that means is they're not hitting the frequency dead on, where it needs to be. So if they sound a bit flat, it's lower in frequency than it should be. So it's not an entire flat down and not an entire semitone. It's just sounding a little bit flat. It might be actually an entire tone, depends how out that musician is. I know you might go, ooh, you sound a bit sharp. Again, same concept. That means you're just at a slightly higher frequency than where you should be for that note. The reason we have specific frequencies for that note, because if everybody was playing a D and it was all at different frequencies, orchestras would sound like hell. We really don't want to go to an orchestra that's out of tune, trust me. So, just a little summary of all the terms we've covered there. So the first term we looked at was the word octave. An octave is 2 notes that are 8 notes apart on a piano, or 12 semitones apart in the system, and they sound great together. Scales, series of notes that sound pretty good. Lots of different ones to learn. Semitone, the distance between one note and the next one up. Tone, the distance between one note and another one 2 semitones away. Flat, a note 1 semitone down from a letter note. Sharp, a note 1 semitone up from a letter note. So there you have it. Some very basic concepts of music and some terms I hope you can find useful in your future. So as always, if you have any questions or comments, please drop them down below. I'm happy to expand on anything we've covered here or go into any details of any questions. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Please give us a little click, like the video, and we'll see you next week on the Bass Pixies double bass tutorials.